disc brake conversion on this Ford Falcon, and the brakes right now are literally horrible, so we just decided to upgrade to disc brakes. It's not that hard to change. So basically all you need is a kit to do it. You just need a rotor, your bearings and seals. This is the mounting brackets to mount your brake caliper onto the car. And then you got your brake line and all your bolts. And that's all you need for this wheel. And then you'd have obviously mounting brackets for the other side too. I already did the other side, so I'm going to show you real quick what that looks like. And yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's basically what it looks like. It's jacked up right now, so it doesn't look normal, but put one bearing in here, obviously, and the other bearing goes into this side. So let's take the wheel off and I'll show you real quick how to swap those out. Use a 9/16 socket. Okay, so now all we gotta do is swap out this brake line, and this thing just attaches right here. So all you gotta do is pull this clip out. This clip was in there, you just pull it straight out. And then you disconnect this from here, and then you pull these apart, and then the new one just goes right in there, and then put the clip back in. So we got the brake line all hooked up. You just run it from here down and onto the caliper, and then this here is the bracket. We don't have it tight yet, but there's two separate brackets with this kit. And in the manual or in the instructions it says to mount this thing behind this bracket. So these 4 bolts mount directly to the spindle here, and then these 2 bolts and these 2 bolts are what holds this back bracket onto this bracket. And then your brake caliper just mounts onto here, and you got your 2 bolts here and here that mount onto here. And you obviously want to put your rotor on before you put the caliper on. So I'm just going to tighten these up real quick, torque them down. Usually most kits there comes a torque sheet with it, but this one didn't have a torque sheet with it, so I'm just going to torque them what I think they should be. And yeah, basically just make them good and tight. Make sure you have lock washers on any of them, on all of them. These have lock nuts on it. Two is install the rotor, so you want to make sure that all the dirt and debris is off of this spindle here. Yeah, it's very important that you don't get any dirt on here or inside the rotor where the bearings go. And so you can just get grease at any auto parts. I think Walmart has it as well. This is just a like a full synthetic grease. It's basically designed for pretty much anything. You can get cheaper stuff, but I like to use the full synthetic. And yeah, you just want to put some on the shaft here. Make sure that you don't get any dirt in it. So I'm just wearing any latex glove, and I'm just going to use that to put the grease in because it helps keep dirt away from it, and because dirt can stick on your hands easier and stuff like that. So you just want to grease it up real good. So just take your thumb and put grease on your thumb and just go over the edge like that, and it'll like push it right into that crack like that. You just want to make sure that everything's filled up with grease. And then next step, I'm just going to put a bunch of grease in here. I try to cover all the walls around the whole rotor on the inside. That way if there's any dirt in there, it doesn't like the grease traps it and doesn't get into the bearing. Now just throw your bearing in there. And next you want to put your seal on. Just grab your seal like this. And then there's a special tool for this, but I always just use a hammer and tap it in. You want to make sure it doesn't bind or anything. Center it right there. Now, next thing you need to do is put the front bearing in. So, got your front bearing right here. The front bearing's smaller than the back bearing. So you just got to pack this bearing, and you might want to put a little bit more grease in there, and then pack this thing and just stick it on there. So now we're done with the grease. I just threw the bearing in there, and this spacer came with the kit, so I'm just going to use this spacer. There was another washer in here. I mean, I don't think it wouldn't have mattered which one I used, but I'm just using this one because it's new. Just put your spacer in there, and then just put your nut back on. Make sure that it's, I mean, this thing's a little dirty, so I'm just going to clean it real quick. So we got everything on. I put the spacer in, put the nut on, and cleaned up the excess grease. Now I'm just going to tighten it up with one of these. You can use basically whatever. You don't want to make it very tight at all. Just make it kind of hand tight. First you want to make sure that the rotor is seated all the way back in. And like right now I've over tightened it, but you want to over tighten it a little bit just to make sure that the rotor's all the way seated back in and that the bearings are seated right. And then after you over tighten it a little bit, then you can loosen it again. And then there's like a whole bunch of different ways that mechanics do this. Everybody kind of has their own way, but I know a lot of people, they just make it hand tight, and then you just take a screwdriver. Take a screwdriver and see if you can still move the washer back here. If you can't move the washer back and forth, then that means that your nut is too tight, because you don't want any preload on the bearings. Otherwise the bearings are gonna wear out a lot faster because there's gonna be preload on them. So basically you want to make sure that your spacer can move back and forth with a screwdriver, and you want to make sure that there's no play in the rotor. And when you're checking for play, you want to put one hand on the top, one hand on the bottom, and just pull it back and forth and see if you can feel a small jolt or anything. You don't want to do it from over here, because then you're going to be checking your tie rods, because like you can see it moves back and forth because this is hooked up to the steering. If it has play here, that doesn't necessarily mean your bearing's bad. That could mean that your tie rods are bad, because that's where this is hooked up to. So one hand on the top, one hand on the bottom. Check to see if there's play. There's literally no play in this thing, and I can move the washer back and forth. That's behind the nut. And that's basically one way that people do this. Got the nut on there. Next you just pop this cover thing on top of the nut, whatever you want to call it, but yeah, I really don't care. And then it has these holes in it where you put your pin through. Just like that. So you line up your bolt holes. You just got 2 bolt holes to connect this brake caliper and just tighten those, tighten your brake line. Here obviously, make sure it's tight up here. And then after you're done here, you want to bleed your brake. So the tire's back on and yeah, it looks a lot better. Everything went good. It doesn't rub anywhere. I noticed with this kit, the wheel comes out just a little bit more, like toward me, but it still doesn't rub or anything like that, so it's actually perfect. And yeah, it looks a lot better, brakes a lot better, and I'm gonna go test drive it right now. So yeah, if you are looking to do disc brake conversions, then yeah, it'll definitely look a lot better. In my opinion, they're easier to maintenance. And the problem with the disc brakes, I still got disc brakes in the back, but they get a lot hotter because they're all enclosed. So yeah, the heat just kind of gets trapped in there, but otherwise they work good. So we put disc brakes in the front for now because they had to be fixed anyway. So hopefully this video helped you out, and yeah, good luck on your projects. Thanks a lot for watching, and please like and subscribe.